Radio, a podcast produced by Winding Trails Media, for writers, by writers.
Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack.
Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, with Winding Trails Media. And with me today is...
I'm Melanie Kulani, author of nonfiction, science fiction, and sci-fi.
My name is Jennifer Solzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator.
Radar Cook. I am the author of the Iron Chronicles, which is Iron Horseman, Iron Zulu, and soon to be Iron Lotus, which I'm currently editing.
Okay, and if you have gotten our, if you signed up for our monthly newsletter at windingtrailsmedia.com, you will know some of the information I'm about to announce. Over Labor Day weekend, Brad Cook and I will be crossing blades at the Big River. I keep wanting to call it Big Muddy.
Don't.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. The Big River Steampunk Festival up in Hannibal, Missouri.
Yep.
Come check us out. Watch us. We're going to talk about writing and fight scenes, and then we will be taking out our anger on each other. No, actually, we'll show you how fighting is done between the two of us with our styles of swordsmanship. Also, coming in September 30th through August the 2nd. Right Pack Radio.
Right? We said September through August.
Oh, good.
It's going to last almost a year.
Exactly.
We have determined we're going to give this all for a year. Thank you. Let me try it again. Take 4. September 30th through October 2nd.
There you go.
Right Pack Radio is invading Archon. Archon is the Midwest premier science fiction and fantasy convention held in St. Louis, actually in a town called
Collinsville, Illinois.
Thank you, Collinsville. I'm sorry, I've been watching the original Dark Shadows, where it takes place in Collinsport, and my tongue just got twisted.
There is no port in the middle of Illinois.
No. So anyway, back to this.
Collinsville, Illinois.
Collinsville, Illinois. And
Which is fairly close to St. Louis for anyone that's local.
It's a short drive, yes.
And we will be doing 7 different presentations, including, again, you can watch Brad and I try to beat each other up with, actually, Brad, in this case, will be lightsabers, not swords. So, and Jennifer will be on 2 panels I could think of off the top of my head. One is working with an illustrator, and I just got done writing the newsletter. We record this without forgetting the other one.
I believe I'm on the strong character panel.
Yes, you are. And Brad's talking about steampunk. And
Yes, I'll be talking about Victorian inventions. I'll be talking about audiobooks and something else.
Also, writing steampunk, I think.
Is that it?
I thought you already said that.
No, there's a Victorian inventions.
Ah, okay.
And then myself will be doing, with Kathleen, who's not here right now, will be doing the Beyond the War of the Worlds, writing for the modern day radio plays, and all the opportunities that go along with it. And as I said before, Crossing Blades with Brad.
Yes, and you will find me hanging out in Author's Row in the hallway there, selling books all weekend. So come on by, stop by, talk to me, hang out for a bit. I'll take pictures if you're in costume.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
You'll probably even take pictures if they're not in costume.
Maybe, well, yeah, I mean, totally if they want to, but, you know.
Yeah.
He's just going to take pictures of you if you're in a costume.
Exactly.
So he's not going to take pictures of random people who walk by his table.
Yeah, that's creepy.
That's really creepy, even at a convention.
Okay, and today's topic, I know you've all been waiting for, is pacing and rhythm. Sorry.
You want to try that again?
I was going to say, you might want to cut that out.
Wow.
Let's take a retake.
Take 5? No,
Yeah,
we already did take 4. This is take 5.
Take 5. Pacing and rhythm. Sorry, everybody. That was unexpected.
Don't-
Radio, sometimes you never know.
You have the power. You could just edit that out and replace it with a new take.
I could, but I probably won't.
It's funny.
Yes.
So
Oh,
anyway,
and the funny.
pacing and rhythm.
I guess what is pacing and what is rhythm?
Well, yeah, and also, is it different across all media? The answer is yes. So, what is pacing? Am I jumping in a pace car while I'm writing? What is it?
Yes.
That would be awesome. But
Yeah, it would be, but yeah.
Now, so pacing, I actually love talking about pacing because it's something I do very specifically in my books. Pacing is the way you tell the story. So it's the way the story unfolds. It's the beat of the story. It is how quickly it unfolds, how slowly it unfolds. All of that will determine your pacing. I'm sure if Fedora were here, she'd disagree with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, what-
I will
On some definition.
Exactly.
I will say that pacing is probably the prime reason why I am a plotter. It's not the only reason, but it's the reason why I can't be a pantser, because apparently I can't do pacing without planning.
Okay.
Because if I try and write and just to write, boy, I end up writing a lot of boring stuff, you know?
A lot of stuff that ends up on the floor after you cut it.
Yes.
Well, I write for the YA and middle grade market, so I don't have an audience that wants to sit around forever reading a book. And if the book is too slow and boring, they will put it down. So for me, I like really fast-paced books. I like a book where you've just read 30 pages and you don't even realize you've just read 30 pages. I really try and go for that. I love white space. And we'll get into all of that, different ways you can have pacing, I'm sure. But one of the ways I really like doing it is by having short, fast, quick sentences that get you through the story kind of as fast as possible. And I'm doing that very much on purpose because I want you to, not only absorb the story, I want you to enjoy it, but I also want you to get through the book in days or weeks, not months or years.
I'm gonna do an addendum to what you just said. As
Yeah.
fast as possible, but changing to as fast as appropriate.
There you go.
Because sometimes that fast, that
You can't
clip
go too fast.
is too fast.
Yes.
Even in a YA book that
yeah.
is supposed to be really quick. It isn't supposed to linger on the color of the leaves on the trees and the
Exactly.
smell of the air and
But-
things that an adult genre, an older genre would take some more time to just enjoy.
Yeah.
Young people, because that's the reason why a lot of YA middle grade children's books are also short. Is not only just that it's easier to read, but
Yeah.
because there's less in there.
Because of the way this conversation is going, could we just take a step and describe what rhythm is? Because all these, you were talking about short, quick sentences, and I think that goes more to rhythm,
Well,
which is part of pacing.
Before we do, I do want to say something about pacing, and
Yeah.
then I'll be happy to open up to rhythm. Right, actually, if you go out onto Winding Trails Media's YouTube channel, and we've got something out there called From the Scriptwriter's Table, which is talking all about writing audio dramas and being able to apply those to other fields as well. Look for the episode called The Rapid Getaway. In radio dramas, the pacing is extremely critical, and you have got to be very fast with your pacing, even if you're doing for adult as well. And I kind of use the analogy that in a novel, you've got some time, not true, young adult, depends on your age range you're working with. But you've got a little time you can build up the story. Not a lot, but you've got pages you can build up that story with. And if you consider a normal page to be 250 to 300 words a page, picture that. Okay, in radio drama, radio dramas are based on a page equals a minute. You have got roughly a page to get the audience's full attention. And really, you've only got 30 seconds. So if you want to look at that, a page in radio drama is technically 150 words. So you've got roughly half. One page is roughly half of a novel page in manuscript. And you've got half of that to hit the ground running and keep the pace going. So going back to Melanie's question, what is rhythm? How do you guys use rhythm in what you write?
Well, I would say whereas pacing is the plot of your story, rhythm is the words of your story. And I think that's probably the easiest way to describe it, because pacing really falls under how your story unfolds, and rhythm is more about how the words you use. Right here, it's talking about the alternating your sentence length to affect the rhythm of the story you're trying to tell. Relocating words and phrases, embracing sentence fragments to kind of quicken up the rhythm, matching the rhythm to the mood, and then applying tension and release to your words and your sentences to kind of build up that rhythm or to slow down that rhythm.
And before I turn it over to Jennifer, I'll move to her next. You said right here it says, what are you reading from?
This is daily writing tips, 5 tips about writing about writing with rhythm.
Perfect. Go ahead, Jen.
I think it's important to note that some of our listeners, I'm sure, have already noticed that both pacing and rhythm are music terms.
Yes.
In addition to writing terms and many terms. And that is very appropriate because it all has to do with how your story sounds.
Yep.
When you read very quickly, sometimes you don't have you train yourself out of that interior voice that's reading. But that is a thing. It's true. When you're reading through it, you're expecting it to sound very natural for as if you're being told a story. It's supposed to read well out loud as well as on the page, which is one reason why we always say read it out loud to yourself before as part of your edits, because how it sounds with air quotes has a lot to do with how well it reads, and that all has to do with the rhythm and pacing.
Yeah.
When a lot of the same rhythm is used over and over again, it becomes a monotone, and then you lose interest in what's going on because it all bleeds together, as opposed to you take a quick sentence and then you have a longer sentence that lets you sort of take a deep breath at the end, and it's another quick sentence again. And the variety, as previously mentioned, has to do with how quickly that paragraph, that book entirely, is processed by the human brain. Because the human brain is taking it in sentences with grammar and translating it the same way we would translate heard speech into language, into concepts that we know.
I will say that, especially if there are words that are difficult to pronounce or unusual names, sometimes there are shortcuts. For instance, there was a certain book that had appropriate names they were historical names that were not made up by the author, but they were extremely long and extremely hard to pronounce, and extremely hard to figure out how to pronounce based on how they looked on the page. So when you just look, oh, this character's name starts with an X. Okay, so I'll just think Mr. X every time I see this person. And so it's like, yeah, I'm not thinking of that person's name every time I see that. I just see that as Mr. X every time I see it. But the same, so, and sometimes I mispronounce words in my head. So, maybe Irish names are the best for this. I have a version, and I'm very surprised when I get the audiobook and find out what the name's supposed to sound like.
Hermione.
Her name was Hermione until I saw the movie.
I didn't pronounce Hermione right until
it was Hermione until we read the 4th book, when she painstakingly explains to Crumb how to pronounce her name. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, sorry.
Well, see, when I read the book, I actually knew someone that was British, so she explained it.
There you go.
Going back to the pacing and so forth, or the rhythm, I should say. I think that going back to an earlier episode, which we talked about Ernest Hemingway, I think that's where being able to drop name, the tagline, the he said, she said. Dialogue text. Thank you. I am having a day today. Helps out with that as well, because that makes it faster as far as the rhythm's concerned.
And foregoing dialogue tags at all. When people are speaking very quickly, even that pause in your brain to read he said, she said might not feel appropriate anymore.
Exactly.
Another thing is emotional text needs to be used correctly, because there are some authors, I guess they're very good. Maybe I either got used to what the author was styles like, or they were good at conveying in their text, because it's like I was imagining the thing being read with the right emotion, and then I got to the text where they described the emotion. It's like, oh yeah, she didn't say that before. So it almost pulled me out of the story, which was the exact opposite of what it was supposed to be doing. So. Now, in an audio play, you don't have that at all because the actor is conveying the emotion.
Same thing with
Conveying
the
the
script.
emotion.
Yeah.
And also you're missing the visual context. So, which you got a little more telling and showing going on with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, that's a problem that I have run into many times while editing Threadcaster on my novel, still in the editing phase. What I consider to be finished, I'm going back and reading over and punching up with that final polish. And a lot of it has to do with reading it out loud. And an issue that I found pacing-wise over and over is that I expect my characters to elevate their emotion much more quickly than me as a reader is ready to accept. So within a course of 2 paragraphs, a character goes from telling a joke to being angry and slamming their fists on the table, and that's a pacing issue. Because in order to realistically achieve those 2 extremes of emotion, they either need to have a personality problem, or they have. I'm going to need to process, put some in the middle process, some in betweens between those 2 keyframes to pad out the action and let the reader follow me along that path to slamming your fists on the table. Or perhaps I need to dial back slamming your fists on the table, because often, which is my problem, is they get very, very angry over something they could probably get a little angry about.
And something you said, before I turn this over to Brad, you're next, you've just said something I think is a great editorial tool that I don't think every author uses, and they need to. Read your work out loud.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel the pacing on that. You can feel the rhythm on that. You can also stumble over the words that you thought were great, but turned out to be real speed bumps.
You find all the rhymes you didn't realize were in there.
Oh, yeah.
Or unintentional iambic pentameter.
That's not a problem I run into.
And
I don't accidentally end up being more refined than I actually am.
I was reading this in someone else. I didn't do this.
And some programs out there will read it for you, so you can always burn a CD if you want to of that, and put it in your car when you're driving.
As
You
long
can
as you're
listen
not
to
listening to Microsoft Sam read it, because he won't give you a realistic rereading.
Right.
You gotta be careful with what's reading it.
Yes.
But yeah, and this, kind of goes into what the different genres mean, because to be honest, especially writing YA middle grade, one of the big differences is that kind of rhythm that comes into it. YA has a much more, normal speech pattern to it, but I often read a lot of middle grades that I almost feel have a melody to them, simply because of the fact that they're trying to be, kind of have a rhythm to the voice that's being read. I don't necessarily try and write that way. My middle grade's that way, but, I do have to admit, partly it is just the words you use and everything like that kind of create that sense of almost music. And this all goes to your voice. So your voice will play very much into your pacing and rhythm. I didn't realize how fast a pace I had until people started reading Iron Horseman.
If they finished it in a couple hours?
Yeah, and they were like, this is a really fast read, a quick read, I really like that. But then what I noticed, those were adults telling me that. And then I had kids who were telling me what a great roller coaster ride it was.
Mm-hmm.
And how much they enjoyed it because they could, get through it, and how, it was action-packed. And, kids have a very different, they don't kind of realize the pacing issue, that's going on. They just really like that a lot happens.
Kids are thankfully very forgiving because they aren't bogged down by all the knowledge of how you're supposed to do
But that's
things.
it, they're also not bogged down. They're not like, God, this was a slugfest, I had to read it like 100 times in a row before I got it,
Well,
any of that kind of stuff. So
this is partially the reason why there's so many cliches in young adult, because they haven't read all the cliches yet. They're new to them.
Jen?
Oh gosh, I was thinking so much about cliches and YA, I forgot what I was going to say. What was the point you were making just now?
I started off with the rhythms, and then I moved into the way.
It was
YA
melody.
program.
You said
Yeah.
that some books have a melody. I wanted to take a moment before that got away from me, and then it did. So thank you for bringing me back. To applaud previous commenter and my CP and editor, Catherine Bakewell, who was here a couple weeks ago. The book she's currently querying is about a musical composer The young woman is a composer and a singer and a violinist performing in a fictionalized court of King Louis XIV. And one thing that I praised her for when I was reading it was that the voice that she used sounded, like it had a certain melody just to it because it was being written by a musician. The words she chose, the way she chose to put her observations together, how the camera moved from one thing to another, it all felt very fluid, and in some ways you could feel like, you could almost see like the stanzas in it. It was nice. So there's an example of how it makes a difference, and how writing with a certain point of view sometimes makes the music stronger or less, because she's written other books that don't have a musician as a protagonist, and it didn't have that same sort of melody through it. Not that that was bad, just that this was very appropriate to the book she was writing at the time.
Hopefully she gets published. I'd be curious to read that.
It was really good. I enjoyed it, and I feel like it's going to get published. I hope that the industry doesn't do that thing where they're scared to take a new, an untested author on, and just expecting something more. What's the word I'm looking for?
Generic?
Mainstream, yeah, and I think that it could go far. Hopefully, even if it doesn't get to big publishers, she'll find a small publisher who's willing to take a big risk.
Small publishers love that kind of stuff, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It also
Stuff that
has
sticks out.
it also has an element of having romance bits, but not being romance formula. And I don't think she should change that if someone comes along, because kind of the whole point of the story is that the protagonist is trying to find prestige in places that she can't get it. And, spoiler alert, not a lot of the things that Graziella does actually ends up being successful.
Speaking of romance bits, that made me think about this next question, which is every genre has its own pacing requirements.
Mm-hmm.
For example, with romance, I might be exaggerating this.
Not much.
Probably not.
Not much, but Harlequin, last I heard, by page 25 they should have hopped in bed by then, and by page something else this happens, and by page something else this is supposed to happen.
It's something like there needs to be a romantic scene every 50 pages. So whether that's a full bedroom scene or that's an intimate kissing scene or something like that,
Or an almost scene that something happens to break it up. Like an almost
it's like
kiss
that's a rule that
Yeah.
we haven't had. You can tell your story, but you're going to have to make sure you have a big romance set piece, roughly evenly spaced throughout the book, so that people reading it don't think, "Oh, did I actually pick up a Tom Clancy novel?"
So, how when you write, or actually, I guess when you edit, how do you make sure, or what do you do to guarantee pacing and then guarantee rhythm? There's two questions there.
I want to start off by saying thank you for that addendum. Don't worry about pacing on your first draft, for the love of all that is holy.
Yes.
Just write the thing down,
Yes.
because you can't edit something that's not put down. And I've seen so many authors that I thought were on a really good track get discouraged because they either read a how-to list that was designed for people on a second or third draft, or they had someone give them edits that were a little bit too advanced in the writing process. It's like, no, just write the story down and worry about pacing and rhythm and stuff like that after you're done with it, and you have a whole donut to look at before you start eating it,
Mm-hmm.
It's like you've got to see everything before you can see the hole in the donuts. But how do I do pacing and rhythm? That was your question. Is how we're going to go around the circle. How I do pacing and rhythm, I always start with an outline, because I'm a plotter. And I've mentioned before on the show my closet door outline, which is just a bunch of sticky notes that are color-coded. And if I'm looking at the sticky note list and I notice that there's no blue sticky note for a really long time, then I got to think about either repacing it so that the blue plot line can come back in somewhere, because I can visually see that we lose the plot at this point, and we pick it up again down here, and it's really important. And either I'm going to save that for a big reveal, because sometimes that's what that is, or I have forgotten about it because I got distracted by something else and it meandered. And I either need to pull back on let's say the yellow plot, move the yellow plot elements further down so that we don't lose the blue plot, or find a way to work elements of the blue plot into the yellow string. That's the way I like to do it.
Before I give this to Brad, if no one's seen what she's describing, best way to picture this is if you've seen Sherlock Holmes and the Game of Shadows, and Sherlock Holmes has this big thread web, if you will, of various connecting crimes and so forth. That's not too dissimilar.
No.
One could read my short story, A Clockwork Heart, and it's described in there as well.
Oh, wow. I
Plug.
haven't read it.
Plug.
Plug for both of you.
Plug.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah.
So that's how I make sure, just visually, before I ever start, that it's going to be roughly paced. And then when I read it back over, because I'm thinking in my head right now of my ghost story, which is currently in first draft mode, and I'm aware that there are bits of that I've written that is probably going to get cut out. I'm not going back in to cut it out now, because that's not the time for it. Now it's first draft time and everything goes down. But I'm aware that we're dwelling too long in... The story takes place over 100 years. I'm aware we're dwelling too long in this decade. We're spending a really long time in this decade when so much interesting stuff happens after it. So when I go back through, I'm going to take these perfectly good scenes, because they're just fine. They're just fine scenes. Sometimes they have interesting lines in them, perhaps little character moments to further flesh people out. But specifically, these ones don't involve other characters that I could do similar things with later. And I'm probably going to go out and cut out maybe 15 to 20 pages from the first bit of the book, just knowing what's ahead of me. And I didn't know that was going to be cut out when I started writing it. I was just writing this could happen, that's interesting, write it down. You got to put all the ideas on the table before you start sorting them out. So, rhythm, pacing, second draft.
Yes. Right?
So, a couple of different ways. First off, yes, very much in my outline, I can see the pacing. And I generally don't know that I'm too far into something, I'm spending too long in somewhere until it's actually written. Like, I tend not to see that, because I'll be like, oh, I'm just, la-di-da-di, coming along here. And I don't realize, we've just spent 5 friggin' chapters on a train. Maybe that was a little much. But, so that's the first place I see. Then I write the story, I don't care, don't worry about it, pacing comes later. And then I'll go through my edits, and that's when it really starts to come in. And so then a couple of things come into play. First off is, as Jen was saying, the story, knowing when you're too long in a scene, that's really important. Knowing when you start a scene and finish a scene, so you want to get into the scene as close to the action as possible, and you want to leave the scene as soon as the action's over, or whatever's going on in that particular scene.
No crime just saying he left.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is kind of a thing. You don't want to linger too long in something that you can get out of. That's a great way to cut pacing. And then once all that's kind of come into play, things like white space, which is, how much, dark space being how much ink is actually on the page. So thick paragraphs or dark space, they take up a lot. Quick dialogue back and forth, that produces a lot of white space, a lot of blank space.
I've heard it referred to as word density as well.
There you go. Word density is a good one.
It's like, how dense is it with words?
Yeah. And that anything that's thick takes forever to get through. Dialogue is really quick and beautiful to run through, which is why scripts are awesome. And then, in terms of rhythm, it really comes into play with the words that I use. I like to turn phrases. I like to use words that kind of flow well with each other. I love flow. I love word flow. So to me, having something that doesn't sound clunky, that sounds like kind of a beautiful, just sinuous wave, as I like to call it, is a really great way of kind of creating rhythm in a story. And when you do all of this and you get it all together, the goal is that they read the chapter. They don't realize that they've just read 7 to 10 pages.
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize that, they've just gone through this huge section, and They loved it. They got everything out of it, and it was this great scene that they're going to remember forever. And even more beautiful is if they can quote you some of your lines, because we all have favorite lines we pull out of books. That's rhythm. That's a form of rhythm.
Okay. Now I'm going to nail you down. I'm sorry. I'm going to be mean.
Okay.
Being mean to Brad, he'll run the sword through me there.
And there's swords all over this place, so you better watch out.
Yeah.
That's one thing about the studio here. In all honesty, okay. I put before you 15 pages of your first draft manuscript.
Yeah.
Now you're editing it, and obviously you're going to get rid of some of those pages. So let's knock this down to a 10. You're going to go from 15 pages down to 10 pages in your edit, and you're focusing on rhythm and pacing.
How? First off, I guarantee you if I have 5 extra pages, there's a density level that needs to go. I am using 2 sentences when 1 will do.
Mm-hmm.
So instantly you're going to break those sentences apart, take the only words that matter and squeeze them together, because I guarantee you you're using too many extra words. You're using too many A's and thes and justs and that's, and that's a great way. Breaking apart sentences and squishing them together. If you've got 5 extra pages that you're whittling out, instantly you're talking about there's something in the scene that can go. So either you came in too early and you had all this lead up time and you've written half a chapter and you still haven't said what that chapter's about. So if it takes me half a chapter just to even get you onto the mill train from Iron Zulu, that's bad. You want to start off on the train. You want to start off right there and kind of hit them with what the scene is about. If you notice in movies, because movies are known for pacing and rhythm.
And it's really glaring when they're done wrong.
Exactly.
Visual media.
Exactly. We don't have a 70s TV show. The guy would drive into the neighborhood. He would pull up into the driveway. He would get out of his car and he would walk up to the door, knock on the door, and then you would have a 5-minute conversation or a minute-long conversation with whoever's there. And that's a detective show.
Yeah.
Today, if we've got Law and Order or something like that, the guys literally are getting out of their car, there's a quick flash to them knocking on the door, and you have that minute-long conversation. Because the whole lead-up of the guy driving into the neighborhood and getting out of his car and coming up to the door is not necessary. What's necessary is that minute-long conversation that happens at the door.
Jen?
I wanted to bring up an expert example of poor pacing in a film. The majesty of Birdemic Shock and Terror by director James Nguyen. He opens that film with 10 minutes of driving in a car with the same music track. You can hear the music track restart in the middle because he wanted to make a point about that it's about car emissions and traveling. But anytime you're watching the film, the reason why Birdemic Shock and Terror is one of the modern so bad it's good, comedy movies, is he is completely unaware of how long he has dwelt on this. And it goes from boring to hilarious the longer it gets. And you shouldn't have your story do that. Because he was trying to write a serious horror film in the vein of Hitchcock about birds, seagulls and vultures that come down from the sky and kill everybody and explode. Explode. But it was like he was trying to do something serious, but he had no idea what he was doing. So everywhere in that movie that someone is driving somewhere, he shows them leave, he shows them drive, he shows them park, he shows them walk into the building. Because he has no concept of pacing and that those things are unneeded. And every time it happens, when you're watching it, take a drink.
Wow.
Slightly different topic. When this is how I
perfect.
edit.
Just take your turn.
Yeah, the edit thing with I said that the reason why I can't do pacing without plotting. And it's not that I get great pacing on my first draft, because I don't, and I still have tons to cut out. It's that if I don't know where the story is going and what I'm writing to, I end up spending like pages and pages writing things that don't matter because I just think, okay, what comes next and what comes next. But if I'm plotting, I at least know where I'm going. This is the next important thing that happens. This is the next important thing, and I might take too long to get there. And I might stay too long after, and that needs to be fixed on draft 2. But at least I know what exciting thing is supposed to be happening. Or what important thing, even if it's not exciting. But, sometimes things are important. It's like, yes, this little detail is going to be very important later, but, how do I make it, put it in an interesting way, or at least embed it in an interesting scene,
What I'm currently doing right now is writing radio plays. It's a couple episodes. And it's a very unique writing. I've talked about earlier pacing with that. You've got to get people's attention within half of a page, which is, the page itself is already half of what you would have in a novel.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really talking about a very short time. My writing style, I'm more a pantser. I admit that. But what I'm having to do is, because I need to understand the world this character's in, and I always find, I admire you guys who do the plotting and have your characters down. My characters rebel like crazy. I could think they're XYZ, and it turns out, no, they're RSPQ instead.
That still happens to me.
This happens to everybody.
Yeah. But I mean, really bad.
Oh, I had
So-
2 characters switch personalities on me.
Okay. But what I'm going with is, I do a 0 draft first. Until I get a good enough feel for what's really happening, and then I'm learned with this one, I'm doing a synopsis style story structure per episode. So I've got 30 pages or less to get out an entire episode, and I'm always constantly thinking about what the next episode is. It's a unique position, especially for what I'm writing. It's a unique, compared to everything else I've written, I should say. It's a unique style, a unique feel to it, and something which I never learned in novel writing.
Well, this reminds me of, recently I saw The Killing Joke,
Yes.
and afterwards there was a little documentary on the making of The Killing Joke, so this isn't ruining anything, even though the comic...
Don't give it away. There are a lot of people out there who...
Yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to
Jealous.
I'm not going to give away the ending.
By the way, it is available on CD, on DVD, and on iTunes.
Yes.
If you
And-
didn't catch the Fathom event.
Yeah,
Yes.
and by the
Or
way...
read the comic,
Yes.
the seminal comic, like...
Sorry, go on.
And it does in the same. They changed some things in the movie, but it was mostly what they just changed it so Batgirl wasn't fridged. But the plot was basically the same. But point is, they were comparing making The Killing Joke to making the Batman cartoon. And one of the things they said, in a half-hour cartoon, it was all action, 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 action.
Right.
But with the hour-and-a-half movie, they actually had some time to slow down during certain points and have the reflective beats.
That's a very
So
good point.
part of it isn't even just the media, although that makes a difference too.
Yes.
It's also what length of this media. Is this, for instance, is this a short story, or is this an audio, or is this a novel?
Right.
The same thing is true for no matter what media you're in.
And a rule for pacing and rhythm in terms of length. Look at the fraction of the total that this scene you're looking at has, and how important that is.
Yeah.
If the most important thing in your novel happens in 2 pages and it's done and doesn't have repercussions later, because like if it's a big the death of someone, you don't have to write about the slow motion death of this person over 3 pages to get the pacing right. It can happen suddenly, but the emotional percentage of how that has affected all of the characters, your main character specifically, because the main character, whether first person or third person or second person or whatever person, is that's the one informing the audience about what they're supposed to be focused on at the time. So if the whole story, here I'll use an example from recent literature, The Hunger Games.
Okay.
I enjoyed The Hunger Games for the most part. I had some issues with it. I had a lot of issues with the POV and the voice and the pacing in those books. Specifically in the third one, which would be the 4th movie. But in the 3rd book, there's a character that we get to know very well over the course of a book and a half, who dies very quickly off screen, and we never have an emotional moment to address it. And that always bothered me so much, because we've stopped to address stuff like food and what clothes we're wearing and things like that. We've stopped for a long time to address things that I thought were less significant than the death of this character. And yes, it was a fast scene. They were on the run from someone. People were hunting them. But it was significant enough that the lack of pacing in that moment made me feel like we'd forgotten about how important he was supposed to be to us. So there's my example of how not paying attention to that could perhaps either spin your audience out or make something that should be important feel less important than it
I
is.
have a good one for this.
Okay.
Okay.
No, you go for it.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Most importantly, Return of the Jedi, by far my favorite of them all. The death of Vader. Vader's death happens in a scene that takes up a huge chunk of the movie. So he has the entire lightsaber battle. There's conversation that goes on with the Emperor, and then you have, Luke being tortured by lightning, and his dad picks him up and chucks him over.
Chucks the Emperor.
And chucks the Emperor.
It chucks him.
Good point.
Yeah, he falls. The Emperor falls to his death. He does
left out a couple of
the
words.
symbolic fall into hell, and Luke does not.
Yeah. But the point is, Darth Vader starts dying then. We have all the problems then. Then we get the dragging of him.
Yeah, we take the time to see how Luke gets him out.
Yeah, we see him dragging him to the shuttle. They lay on the the landing the ramp to the shuttle. They have a conversation. He then dies right there. There's kind of an emotional moment for Luke, and then we get the shuttle flying off. And then we not only do we get the did we get the shuttle flying off? I thought we did.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you get the liftoff. I
think you do get the liftoff. I'm not.
Anyway, depends probably which version you're watching.
Yeah.
Which extended version?
Yeah.
In the special edition, we have a 3-minute lingering CGI shot, I'm sure.
Exactly. Then you get the burning, of his body
fire,
down
yeah.
below. And then not only to top that off, we get Force Dad.
Ghost Dad.
Ghost Dad. Force Ghost Dad.
Ghost Dad, like Bill Cosby.
Exactly. Standing there, and it's a happy moment. And I mean, all of this takes probably like a fifth of the movie, to unfold. And it's a very satisfying death for a character that we have followed for several movies. And it's emotional. It takes you on this whole emotional roller coaster.
Well, it's the discontinuation of Darth Vader's arc.
Yes.
Like, we followed the arc of what was just a scary man.
Yes.
And then we learn that he has an emotional... it's like we think he's evil. Why is he treating his son this way? But you see that there was still good in him.
Yeah.
That's the point, is like we get to the end and the scenes you're describing had to be that heavy.
And I would say that if it were not for... So to put it on the other side would be Qui-Gon for me. Because
yeah, he's very similar.
Well, Qui-Gon gets killed. We get a little bit of talkie-talkie. We get a little bit of burny-burny.
A little bit of
and then we get a little bit of talkie-talkie afterwards, but nothing else. It's very quick. It's very fast.
Well, pacing is a real problem with the prequels anyway.
Yes.
Can anyone say pod race?
Pod race, yes.
Yes.
In the movie theater, when the pod race ended, I thought the movie was over. Because I felt like I'd been there for 2.5 hours already, and I realized we were only half done, and I had to use the bathroom.
I will admit, when I watched the first movie, I was super excited going in. But as far as the movie experience.
Everyone was.
Yeah, no.
You needed way more Darth Maul.
I mean, no, after all, let me back up here. As an 8-year-old, this movie, Star Wars itself came out. There were no VCRs yet, people. As an 8-year-old, I found a way to either twist people's arms or hop on the bus myself, taking any money I was making from cutting lawns to see this damn movie 22 times in the theater.
22, wow.
22.
I want to talk about the different movies I've done that with. Some of them are embarrassing.
But the sad part was, I found the pacing on Phantom Menace to be so slow that I was excited when the lightsaber fight was finally occurring. And that, I'm literally sitting up at that point. And unfortunately, the film melts. Melts.
Oh my.
Even
the projector was done with the film.
The film melts. And Darth Maul is getting ready to fall in pieces, depending which version you saw. Go down and be split in half. I'm like, no. It just made me realize how bad. Because of course, he had to redo.
Well, and this comes from American Graffiti.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Star Wars is I should say the Phantom Menace is American Graffiti in space with the hot rods and all that kind of stuff.
There's definitely an element of that. George Lucas has like a bag of ideas he likes to pull out of.
Yeah.
He loves hot rods.
But
That's his thing.
I wanted to give George Lucas a little bit defense. He realized that there was a problem.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines to quote ever in my whole life comes from one of the behind-the-scenes featurettes of the Phantom Menace. Everyone is sitting around watching like the first cut-together version of the final movie, and everyone's quiet. And George Lucas goes, "I may have gone a bit too far in a few places."
Well, the funny thing is how much longer that scene really is.
Yeah.
Because every single lap is in excruciating detail of what happens, and I think some of what he cut off probably should have been included.
Yeah. Well, the I may have gone too far in a few places extends to the whole film.
Yeah.
Because there are the Red Letter Media guys who I like to reference a lot. Their critical dismemberment of the prequels. He noted that there are 4 plot lines concluding at the end of the Phantom Menace, and that's more plot lines than in any other Star Wars movie. And for a brand new cast of characters,
That's a lot.
that is a lot to do, and it was a lot of information, and it ruined the pacing because we didn't know what to care about. Do we care about the Jedi fighting? I kind of care about the Jedi fighting. Oh, but now we're paying attention to Anakin. Do we care about Anakin? I cared a little bit about Anakin because I had to sit through the dumb pod race thing, but I don't really care. The only reason I care about Anakin is because I know he turns into Darth Vader, so I know he's not going to die.
Cute little Darth Vader.
And it's like, oh, and now we're invading with Padme? Okay, that's fun, I guess. She could die. I don't know anything about her. Oh, but now we're looking at Jar Jar Binks, and he's doing, like, comedy stuff. Do I care about this?
Yeah.
I'm confused, and it all cuts itself together, and there is no pacing. There is no moment where I'm like, where the audience is watching and saying, this is the important bit, because it's all equally important.
Not at all. I'm derailing the conversation a little bit when I say this. By the way, I mentioned earlier I was watching the original Dark Shadows. And you're going to think, okay, why am I talking about Dark Shadows in the middle of Star Wars?
Darth Vader, Dark Shadows.
No.
It follows.
No. And I forget what episode number it starts, but for several episodes, there's a character named Buzz. Buzz is a bad boy.
I hate Buzz already.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Buzz, and I like
Buzz
this.
is a bad name unless you're an astronaut.
Yeah, Buzz. Yeah, no comment.
He's the
Buzz
exception to the
Buzz
rule.
is a motorcycle gang type leader, and they really, this is filmed in 1960, so it's very much sugar coated. But I do like one phrase they use on this character is he's as much fun as a bag of spiders. Buzz is played by George Lucas.
Really?
You
I didn't
go
know
see
he
what
was an actor.
I didn't know either. You go to George Lucas's
It was early in his
Wikipedia
career,
Wikipedia page and all that. It doesn't talk about it. Go to Dark Shadows, and I'm like, when I was watching it, and I've watched this before, but I was watching it, I'm like, why? He looks somehow familiar.
Did he talk like this a little bit?
No, I didn't quite know. He was a little more enunciated, but the pacing of his lines was bad too. So, but not picking on George, but it was just fascinating watching him as an actor. So, check it out. Right now, Dark Shadows is available on Hulu. I don't know for how long, the original series, but go ahead.
Okay. I was going to throw out another example of horrible pacing.
Oh, I meant horror. Yes, go for it.
For those of you who are anime fans, I have 2 wonderful, horrible examples of pacing.
Yay, I wanted you to bring this back. This was a conversation we had to be off
The very first season of Naruto, for those of you who don't know, is about a kid ninja, a bunch of kid ninjas.
Believe it.
Takes an excruciating amount of time to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
Several episodes before anything happens. These are half an hour long episodes. But as we were saying, the other one then that goes right in with that would be DBZ.
I would say that DBZ might be the originator of the
Could someone define what DBZ stands for?
It's Dragon Ball Z.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's the originator of the, let's call it the Arena Saga.
Yes.
That's Dragon Ball.
Yes.
Because Dragon Ball had several, they would go and
I
there
would
would be
completely agree
a
with
section
this.
of an Arena Saga where
Yes.
the whole plot was we are participating in this cage fight
Yep.
with different people every episode. Can I
Jump right in.
All right, I didn't know if you were finished.
No, go ahead.
Anime and a lot of things, but I have a history in anime. You have a history in anime. It's like we're familiar with the tropes of anime. It's an excellent sort of case study in pacing.
Yes.
Because the thing that happens often in anime is the cartoon shows spawn out of a very popular comic book.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The manga books run, they release once a month, I believe, in issues, kind of a lot like an American Western comic would. You know, short issues.
So about 22 pages.
Yeah, that come out, and often they come out in these great big old manga magazines that are printed on newsprint that run multiple strips all at once. They all come out a month and you grab them. I got Shonen Jump, a couple of volumes of that when I was younger. That's where I first discovered Naruto and One Piece. I had such a crush on Kakashi just right away. Anyway, when you're making the books have runs. And then the mangaka has, they have something in mind what they're doing. Well, when the anime is really popular, often you'll do the Game of Thrones thing and you'll run out of print media to take inspiration from. Now, you could either go the Helsing, Full Metal Alchemist, etc. route and just go ahead and make up the second half of the story and finish your run that way. Or if you're a popular enough anime like Naruto, or I think Yu Yu Hakusho did it, you just enter what they call filler, where they don't have any plot. There is literally no plot, they've run out. We need to find something for them to do that's not going to affect the characters too much, because we are going to pick right back up with them when we get more media. So that's perfect timing for an arena plot. Or we're gonna, in Sailor Moon, they like to have the monster of the day. It's like we're just gonna do formula episodes for a while. So we introduce the big bad villain, and in the book run, we have a couple adventures, and then we defeat the big bad villain. In the anime TV show, they gotta fill like 26 episodes.
Yeah.
So we have a chunk, 5 episodes between this plot point and this plot point that is Sailor Moon fights a collection of themed monsters.
Okay.
And then we introduce the next plot point. The next plot point is maybe a 1 or 2-parter episode. Oh my gosh, there's a brand new villain! And that changes the formula just enough that they can put 5 more formula episodes in the middle. And that's how a show like Sailor Moon keeps their pacing up. A show like the Pokemon anime, the original run, which is currently on Netflix, the Indigo Zone. I was watching it last week. But the way that, I don't know how it does with the later seasons, because I watched it when I was younger and it was running on TV. But Pokemon as a game, because it's coming out of a video game, has very clear points. There are gym battles. You travel this road, you get to this gym battle, you fight this gym leader. You travel this road, you get to this gym battle, you fight this gym leader. And different towns have different challenges in them too. So the anime, it was very easy if they had 26 episodes to fill to pace out all the different gym battles and then the final battle on a grid, let's say, and see how many episodes we have in the middle and then place those strategically so they're not interrupting anything that's really important. And I think it did that very well, because even the filler episodes that you could see are filler, it's not like it's the 3rd filler episode in a row. We just had a gym battle, so now we're going to go on a journey episode, and the journey episode, maybe they run into someone who's not from the game, and they do something like that. Or they take an opportunity to highlight a species of Pokemon that isn't highlighted in a gym, because there's only, so many gyms and gym leaders that all specialize in their different types of monsters, and they have monsters that are pre-defined for them by the game. It's like, well, we don't get a chance to explore Primeape's difficult backstory, living as a monkey with boxing gloves on. So let's take an episode while we're in between gym battles to just highlight that character design, because we're not going to see it anywhere else.
Yeah.
They did a good job anime-wise there, as opposed to the Bleach version where they do all plot and then they abandon plot to just fight a lot for 150 episodes and then they pick it back up again. Or the Naruto plan where the anime went on for so long that the manga just started over in a different form. It's like, and now it's 7 years later.
Yeah.
Here, let's go again. New character designs.
One of my favorite parts of Naruto actually stems out of martial arts movies and samurai films, where you have the fight scene,
Mm-hmm.
and a fight scene is not just a fight scene. It is a story within itself. And so you will get a 3 to 5 episode arc that is one fight scene.
Yeah.
Two people fighting each other, where different things will happen during the fight that tells a weird story that's going on, about the power that they're about to use, or, the technique that they learned in order to defeat the person that they're going through.
Yeah, Goku's first transformation into a Super Saiyan.
Exactly.
His first use of the Kamehameha
However,
technique.
as an observer, as the watcher, you just care about the outcome of this battle. But now I've literally had to wait a month and a week just to watch this one fight sequence. That is probably one of like 5 or 6 fight sequences because it's all happening in an arena. That before you actually get to the end and you find out if anyone graduated or not. And it's just this horrible pacing issue. Gundam does the same thing a lot of times, where Gundam will have these just like weird tales, and Gundam loves to do the break off on some completely meaningless tangent. Love that.
Follow a random character that has nothing to do with the rest of the plot.
And then you're like, but wait, where'd my space battle go? Oh, 2 episodes later we get back to it, it's all still good. Yeah, and it's a really horrible way of doing pacing. And it's episodic TV, so they get away with it a lot. I mean, if you think about it, Game of Thrones, even a lot of TV shows like to have the overall season arc. X-Files was horrible at this. I mean, oh my god, all we wanted to know was whether or not Mulder's sister had been kidnapped by a freaking space alien. And after 5 seasons or 6 seasons or however many seasons, I still can't tell you what the heck happened to Mulder's sister. And it's just, but yet again, you'd have a Villain of the Week episode, and you'd have, the cigarette smoking man come in for an episode and stuff like that. So American TV is just as bad as anime at it. But
yeah, I just took that as an example because.
No, because it's one of the worst. DBZ just takes forever to tell a story. It's so pathetic.
So do you recommend going through and, asking an expert, okay, what episodes do I care about?
Here's interesting.
Watch them, because it's a school. I mean, it's a college, 202 course.
Yeah, it's a course in classic anime.
Yeah.
No, now it's time to have, to throw out the majesty that is Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
Yes.
By Team 4-Star, which is an abridgment of the Dragon Ball Z series in comedy form, and they do a lot of good cuts. They cut out, instead of spending a whole episode screaming while floating in midair and glowing yellow, they do that for a short bit, make a crack about it, and move on.
Or you can just watch the obligatory, it happens in every single anime, the recap episode, which is a half-an-hour episode of everything you just watched over the last, say, 8 weeks, that you didn't really need to then watch the last 8 weeks. You could have just watched this one show, you'd be fine.
Full disclosure, that's how I watch every season of Deadliest Catch.
So, we have gone from pacing and rhythm to anime as a good example.
This is why we don't bring up anime in every episode.
I mean,
why?
talking
We're
about
right
pacing
back.
and rhythm, maybe not rhythm, because rhythm may not play in as much.
No.
But pacing, oh my god, animes are horrible at pacing. Some of them are really good. I've been watching Escaflowne, and it's an episodic, it's telling a story, it's going along. I mean, I don't know if Prince Vaughn's ever going to get back to, his village or his, kingdom and be able to
No spoilers.
Fill it back up. That's taking forever. But along the way, there's a ton of robot battles, and that's all I care about.
Well, even those robot battles, though, like they don't just have a battle for the sake of having a battle.
No.
Because they're following their own plot.
Exactly.
Escaflowne is a comic book, but I think the comic either came out concurrent or came out after. And I think there's a shonen version and a shoujo version. So one for girls and one for boys, and the girls is more romance-based and the boys is more punching each other based. But the anime itself, it was plotted to be a 26-episode arc.
Yes.
And every episode has a thing that happens in it that's important for you to see in the previous episode.
It's a quest show,
So
it works.
It's good.
Kind of the same way Pokemon is. It's a journey. You're going along on a journey. It's really easy to tell that episodically. Star Trek did the same thing. They're going across the galaxy. It's really easy to tell episodically. Scaflowne works.
Yes, I like that Scaflowne.
Trying to break up a 10 arena battle into 26 episodes.
It can be done. It just needs to be done gracefully and mindfully in terms of pacing and rhythm.
And on that note, I'm going to end this episode of Right Back Radio. So tune in next week for yet another interesting tale of the writing industry. And have a great week writing. Have you ever written an audio play? Have you even considered writing one? Visit www.windingtrailsmedia.com because currently we are looking for audio plays to produce. Again, that is www.windingtrailsmedia.com and visit Calls for Scripts. And while you're at it, please sign up for the newsletter and you will find that icon at the bottom of every page. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.